snuggled up in your bed. This one's gonna be a wild one, so buckle up. It's inspired by true events in a way, because there's some stuff going on inside this home, and I have no idea what's going on, but I wrote a story to describe that feeling. I never liked the apartment, but I needed somewhere cheap. It wasn't much, a basement unit with damp walls that glistened faintly in the half-light, like the skin of something slick and alive. The ceiling sagged so low I could almost reach up and brush it with my fingertips, its cracked plaster stained with blooms of black mold that spread like veins. The air always felt used, stale, heavy, thick, with the lingering breath of whoever had lived here before me. Maybe they never really left. There was one small window, a narrow slit at street level, its glass so grimmed with dirt it dulled the weak daylight to a sickly yellow. Through it, I could see the scuffed souls of passerby, their shadows flickering past like ghosts. Sometimes the feet lingered, sometimes they stopped. At first, it was just a feeling, a wrongness that clung to me like damp cloth, the sense that I wasn't really alone. Even when the deadbolt was turned, the blinds were drawn tight, and the silence pressed into my chest until it hurt to breathe. But then came the tapping, and everything changed. It started on the first night. I was in bed, curled on my side beneath a blanket, eyes closed, but my mind was restless when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Not the skitter of a mouse across the floorboards, not the groan of old pipes in the walls, not even the wind rattling the windows. Something deliberate, something patient, a sound that paused between each beat as if testing the air, listening to see if I'd flinch. I didn't. I couldn't. My body turned to stone, breath trapped in shallow sips, eyes wide and unblinking as I stared into the darkened room. The tapping came again. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, precise, like a finger pressing into soft flesh, waiting for the give. It was coming from the closet. I turned my head, slow, heart slamming against my ribs, and saw the door. It was open, just a crack. A thin sliver of deeper black against the gray gloom of the room. I was sure I'd closed it before, pushed it shut until the latch clicked. A small ritual to keep the world contained, but now it was open, the gap wide enough for something to peer through. The air inside the closet was different, darker, thicker, the kind that didn't just sit there but waited. A hungry, swallowing void that seemed to pull at the edges of the room. I couldn't see anything inside. No shapes, no movement. But I could feel it. Watching, listening, waiting. I squeezed my eyes shut, lids trembling, and I told myself it was nothing. Old houses creak all the time. Pipes knock, minds play tricks in the dark. I yanked the blanket over my head, the fabric damp against my mouth, and I willed my body to stay still. Sleep came eventually, heavy and reluctant, dragging me under like a tide. The next morning, the closet was closed. I almost laughed at myself. Almost. Then I saw the scratches, 3 of them, carved into the wood of the door, deep, parallel grooves, the edges splintered and raw. They sat at waist height, right where someone or something might reach out and drag its nails, slow, deliberate, savoring the sound. The paint around them was flaked, curling back like burdened skin, revealing the pale wood beneath. I told myself they'd always been there, that I'd just never noticed, that the dim light and my tired eyes were conspiring against me. I told myself a lot of things, The second night, the tapping moved. This time, it came from under the bed. Tap, tap, tap. I bolted upright, the room tilting as blood rushed into my head. The sound stopped, sharp as a snapped thread, but the silence that followed was worse, dense, suffocating, alive with expectation. It pressed against my ears until they rang, and then I heard it. The breathing, right beside me, soft, ragged, too human. A wet, uneven rasp like air dragged through a throat clogged with dampness. It was so close I could almost feel the heat of it against my cheek. The faint stir of it lifting the hairs on my neck. I snapped on the bedside lamp, fingers fumbling at the switch. Light flooded the room, harsh and yellow, casting jagged shadows across the walls. The air was empty. The bed was empty. I checked the closet, heart thudding in my throat. The door was closed, a scratch stark against the wood. The window still shut, the front door locked tight, the chain undisturbed, and yet I couldn't shake it. The certainty that something was still here, not just watching, but waiting, coiled in the corners, patient as a spider. Each night the tapping shifted. The closet, under the bed, the walls where it sounded like nails dragging through plaster. The ceiling where it echoed like something pacing overhead, testing the floorboards of the room that didn't exist. Always in threes, always close. Like something feeling its way around, tracing the edges of my world, mapping it, finding the weak spots where it could slip through. And then came the whispering. Not words, at least not at first. Just sound. The wet slide of lips brushing my ear, too close, too real. A faint hiss of air shaped into something almost alive. It came in the dead of night, pulling me from sleep with a jolt, my skin prickling as if brushed by unseen fingers. I started sleeping with the lights on. It didn't help. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, a rhythm that burrowed into my skull. The whispering followed, threading through the silence like a needle, sharp and relentless. I'd wake to find the blanket half off the bed, tugged toward the closet as if something had gripped it in the night and slowly pulled it off of me. One morning, my shoes weren't where I'd left them. I'd kicked them off by the door the night before, a careless heap of laces and leather. Now they sat by the window, neatly aligned, toes pointing outward, facing the glass, watching. I stopped sleeping altogether after that. My eyes burned, red-rimmed and raw, but every time I closed them, the tapping started again, closer, sharper, a sound that seemed to come from inside my own head. I went to my landlord, voice trembling as I begged him to let me out of the lease. He was an old man, wiry and hunched, with eyes that didn't quite meet mine. He didn't even look surprised. "I'll let you go," he said, scratching at the stubble on his chin. But then he hesitated. "But be careful where you move next." I frowned, a chill curling up my spine. "Why?" His voice dropped low and flat. "It follows the ones who listen." I didn't ask what he meant by that. I didn't want to know. I left that weekend. New place, new start. A top-floor apartment this time, bright with wide windows that let in clean, sharp sunlight. The air was crisp, untainted, free of that basement reek of mildew and memory. For the first few nights, I slept like the dead, dreamless, heavy, the kind of sleep that erases everything. But silence has a weight to it, too. It presses down, thick and unyielding, until you start to hear things you shouldn't. The tapping started again on the 7th night. I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom light buzzing faintly overhead, when I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, toothpaste dripping from the corner of my mouth, and I turned to the door. Nothing. The apartment was empty. I checked every room before bed, a new habit born out of paranoia. And then I heard it again, from the mirror. I stared at my reflection, breath fogging the glass in shallow bursts. My face looked back at me, pale, hollow-eyed, the skin under my eyes bruised with exhaustion, and for a moment, nothing happened. The smudge moved. A shadow faint at first, like a trick of the light. Tall, thin, a silhouette that didn't match mine, stretching upward inside the glass. I whipped around, heart slamming against my ribs. Nothing behind me, nothing in the room, and yet, tap, tap, tap. From inside the mirror, I turned back, slow as a nightmare, and watched as my reflection shifted. Not by much, just a fraction of a second's delay, a hesitation, like a puppet whose strings had snagged. My hand trembled as I raised it, pressing my fingers against the cold glass. It pressed back. The reflection's fingers met mine, but they weren't mine, not quite. The nails were longer, jagged, the skin around them peeling back like damp paper, and then it smiled at me. Not a normal smile, too wide, too slow. A curl of lips that stretched beyond the edges of my face, the skin pulled tight, splitting at the corners, revealing something beneath, something wet and dark. It was glistening like the walls of that basement apartment. I stumbled backward, breath tearing out of me in short, sharp gasps. The thing in the mirror tilted its head, a slow, deliberate motion like a predator sizing up its prey. Tap, tap, tap. This time it spoke.
I found you.
The voice was mine, but warped, layered with something older, something that rasped like wind through dead leaves, and then the light went out. Not just the bathroom. The whole apartment plunged into darkness. The hum of the fridge and the faint buzz of the streetlights outside snuffed out in an instant. I stood there, blind, the sound of my own breathing loud in my ears. I didn't sleep that night, and I haven't slept since. Because now, the tapping happens even when the lights are on. It follows me through the apartment, 3 sharp beats from the kitchen counter, the bedroom walls, the bathroom sink. It's in the windows too, where the glass trembles faintly with each strike, as if something on the other side is testing its strength. And the mirrors, God, the mirrors. Every reflective surface carries it now. The bathroom mirror, the polished steel of the kettle, the blank screen of my phone when it's off. I see movement in all of them. Slight, fleeting. A shadow that darts away when I look too long, but when I stare, when I let my eyes linger, something stares back at me. But it's not me. Something wearing my face, but stretched wrong, twisted into angles that don't fit. Its eyes are too large, too dark, pupils swallowing the whites until there's nothing human left. Its mouth moves when mine doesn't, whispering sounds I can't quite hear, wet, eager, impatient. I tried covering the mirrors, taped blankets over them, turned the phone face down, avoided anything that shined, but the tapping finds me anyway. It seeps through the walls, through the floor, through the air itself, a rhythm that matches my heartbeat until I can't tell which is which. Last night I heard it from inside the bedroom door. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I sat on the bed, knees drawn to my chest, listening as the sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like it wasn't coming from the wood itself, splinters shifting, fibers groaning under the pressure of something pressing. When morning came, the door was unmarked, but the handle was cold, too cold. like metal left in frost, and there were scratches on the floor, 3 of them, deep and parallel, leading from the door to the edge of my bed. I don't leave the apartment anymore. The windows show me the world outside, people walking, cars passing, life moving on. But the feet linger now. They stop outside my window, shadows pooling against the glass, and I swear I saw them turn, as if they're looking in. I unplugged the lamps, smashed the bulbs. The dark feels safer now. Less to reflect, less to show me what's waiting, but the tapping doesn't stop. It's in the walls, it's in the ceiling, in the hollow space beneath my ribs. Last night I felt it on my skin. Tap, tap, tap. 3 sharp presses against my arm as I lay in the dark, eyes wide, breath held. I didn't move. I didn't scream. I just waited until it stopped. But it didn't leave. I felt it shift, crawl slow, deliberate up my arm, across my shoulder, settling at the base of my neck. A weight, light, but undeniable. Like a hand resting there, fingers splayed and still. I hear it now, even as I write this. Tap, tap, tap. It's from the paper. The ink trembles with each strike, the words blurring at the edges as if something's bleeding through. I look down and the shadow moves. Not on the page, but in it. A silhouette stretching across the lines, tall and thin, its head tilted just so. I drop the pen and it rolls across the floor, coming to rest against the wall. The wall taps back. Tap, tap, tap. I don't know what it wants. I don't know what it is. But I know it's listening to me. Waiting. Smiling. Because now when I close my eyes, I see it. Not in the mirrors. Not in the glass, but behind my lids, a shape carved into the dark, growing sharper with every night I don't sleep. It's closer now, clearer. Its mouth stretches wide, teeth glinting wetly in its eyes, those endless, swallowing eyes, fix on me. I found you, it whispers, and I think it's right. That was part 1 of the story that I wrote. It's pretty creepy. There are some things going on inside the home where I just don't understand. I don't get it. I feel like there's something here that I can't quite pinpoint. I can feel it. I'm not scared of it, but I get a sense that there's something here that I can't explain. There's an energy, at least, a very negative one. A very sad one. But yeah, that's where I got the inspiration for this story. I feel like I have to put it down on paper, and that's what it feels like. And yeah, so pretend I'm giving you a head massage so you can relax and go to sleep. Just kidding. This happened 2 days ago, but I was looking at my phone, and from the corner of my eye, I thought I saw a pen move on my desk. And I thought, maybe it's just my eyes playing tricks on me. And I focused on it, and in my head, I was like, okay, move. I'm going to acknowledge you. I'm going to, accept that you're here, but move it again. Move the pen again. And I was like, just move anything so I know. so I move them and it's nowhere to be found. So I get something else to straighten my hair. 2-3 hours later, I look at the bed and it's the tool that I used, and then my missing straightener on the bed. And I asked my fiance, I was like, what's going on? Where did you find that? And my fiance was like, oh, I didn't touch it. It was there the entire time. And I'm like, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. I'm not going crazy. I had no explanation for that, and it made me feel very, I don't know, it was just very